Alrighty, welcome in everybody. We've got just about 30 people with us, and we got a few more people coming in. While we wait for those additional attendees, I just want to welcome everybody back for the fourth day. This is session 12 of 16 for our virtual 2026 information exchange event. Very excited. It's been a hell of a week. And we've had so much content. We've had so many great speakers joining us. And we have another great session for you today from our wonderful strategic partners, XMPie. Before I pass it over for them to introduce themselves, I just want to cover a few logistical things right off the bat. We do have our chat and our Q&A open throughout the duration of the session. So if there are some specific things you see, especially in the demo, and you want to learn a little bit more about it, or if you have some specific questions about your workflow or your environment that is unique to your environment, and you want to ask those questions, now's the time. We've got the right people on the presentation. Additionally, all attendees are muted and your cameras are off, so please be mindful of that. We'll be checking the chat and Q&A. And otherwise, I'm going to pass it over to David and Scott to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Brendan. Welcome. It's been a fantastic. I've been sat through a lot of the sessions this week, Brendan. So kudos to you and the team. It's been a fantastic session, a fast onslaught of content so far. So let's cover this session. Today we're going to be talking about obviously XMPie, but also about when data meets design. And Scott and I have this little debate going in the background whether it's when data meets design or when data meets the design. And I think that there's a slight connotation to that, and I'll let Scott build on that in a bit. And it may well come out as we talk. But I guess it's a level of terminology when we look at the marketplace and we look at who's in the room. But just to introduce myself, I am David Baldaro. I've been with XMPie for longer than I care to remember, and we're going back to early 2000s, just after XMPie was founded. And I think, Scott, you weren't far behind me. I'm the marketing manager for XMPie, and in my past, I've not only sold XMPie, I've been consulting with XMPie, and now I'm in the marketing role supporting XMPie. So I've had the privilege to see it from a variety of different angles. And you know, the time that we've got today is nowhere near enough to cover XMPie in detail, but we're going to certainly try between Scott and I to cover the important bits for the audience today. Scott, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, Scott Houck. I am out of Northeast Ohio. I cover major accounts and strategic partnerships with XMPie. I want to point out that while I'm a direct mail advocate, I'm a very evangelistic around it. I'm not an expert, so I learned so much this week, and I'll look forward to learning more next week as well on some of the front end data side of things and some of the post composition things, and all that stuff. So look forward to helping with this and giving some context from the XMPie world on this call.
Okay. All right, thanks, Scott. And for those that haven't yet noticed, I'm based in the UK, I've got to say. So I bring the UK contingent to the call. But before we jump into, I guess, the detail, given the audience and given where we are, thought I'd do a very high level, a very quick overview as to where XMPie fits. So from a 30,000 foot view, for those that are new to our world, XMPie isn't just a software vendor. Obviously, we sell software, I say obviously, but we sell software into the marketplace as a whole, have been for over 2 decades. But the best way of looking at XMPie is a toolkit or a communication platform that has spent the last 2 decades evolving alongside both the print marketplace and the marketing ecosystem as well. Combining all that together as I go through. And for me, and for us as an organization, we really see the world through 3 interconnected cornerstones. And you've got those on the screen at the moment. This is like makes up the heart of XMPie. And when you look at XMPie and you start to peel back the modules, everything that you see is integral. It's been built by us upon a solid foundation over the last 2 years. And we've separated into these three cornerstones. And the first of which, and probably the bedrock of what we do, is that of data-driven print, personalized print, VDP. Call it what you want in the marketplace, but it's where we're automating in a very hyper-personalized way content for print or content for PDF. And this is really about taking, high value, high volume VDP jobs and being able to scale them up without sacrificing the production, efficiency, or quality. And it's about making, for me, the complex feel seamless, certainly when you start looking at data and design and how it comes together. And within that data-driven print, one of the biggest advantages of XMPie is how it scales. And Scott and I are going to talk about that, and we'll touch upon it. But when we talk from desktop solutions all the way up to server and enterprise solutions, and many teams start in Adobe InDesign, and we'll talk about that, and they move that same design and logic all the way up to our server platform and scale it. And the foundation can power a wide range of applications. And when we talk about print, we're talking about postcards, self-mailers, brochures, on-demand, and even triggered print, transactional print. If you can print it, pretty much XMPie can have a way of merging the data and design together. And obviously, one of the things we're going to talk about today is that of direct mail. So we're going to kind of keep the focus sharp on direct mail. I'm going to show you some direct mail piece as well. I digress. So coming back to the cornerstones, the second of which is web to print and e-commerce, where we have a product called UStore sits directly inside this cornerstone, and it goes far beyond just providing a buy button, but allows organizations to really start selling hyper-personalized print, and those print templates are based off the back of the same templates that we're using to drive VDP. But not just about driving print templates, we can also set up e-commerce platforms and marketing platforms that also go on to sell full omni-channel campaigns. And that brings us firmly into the last cornerstone, which is where we talk about omni-channel technology. So not only is XMPie driving the volume for print, not only is it able to facilitate that print and be able to put it online as a templated product and be able to sell it and fulfill it, but now you can take the same concept, the same output, the same templates, and also incorporate them into a omni-channel journey where we start to unify print and digital into a single cohesive journey. And again, I'll touch on that later on, just very briefly. So as you can see, there's a lot to cover in the platform. We're not going to go through everything, but I'm going to try and give you a touch upon a lot of things that are obviously relevant today. Scott, with that in mind, let's look at the marketplace and look at where XMPie fits in the marketplace. Do you want to walk us through some of the summary slides and some of the content that you've got?
Yeah. Let's go into kind of focusing down on what we're going to talk about today. So, I've seen this depicted many times, but the way we kind of look at the world when it comes to, mail use cases and so on is there's kind of a continuum there where we've seen there's marketing centric use cases, traditional direct mail. And then on the other side of it is transactional or CCM. And then, there's some middle ground overlaps and things like that. So as we start our presentation, we just want to bring the context back to, we're talking about advertising, marketing centric use cases today. So you see some of the traditional use cases that you may be doing. And again, for our session, we're purposely showing this now because, again, we're not showing and talking about transactional as much as we are marketing types of use cases. And there are reasons for that. Because of how XMPie works and how you'll hear many times of how we leverage the Adobe world as a big partner of theirs throughout this process. So first thing is, hey, we're talking about marketing centric use cases. Dave, go to the next one. I want to talk a little bit about some trends. So the other reason is, there's really a sense of urgency. And, I know on this call, there might be some people that are as wonky and geeky as myself and David, but what I'm showing here is that there are basically two things happening. So I've been able to take part in National Postal Forum, and a couple of weeks before that, I was at Inkjet Summit. So there aren't too many people that go to those kind of things. So I wanted to bring both of the different trends I heard there. And all of you are in the mailing industry, so you know this. I mean, obviously, postal rates are increasing, so there's that aspect of it. And the big takeaway out of the NPF was also about how using digital and physical together, and also driving personalization and relevancy. You have to do that to be valuable. And then from the printing world, for those of us that are on the PSP side, or we're from that side of the equation, for production print and digital print from Inkjet Summit, it's all about how, you know, production inkjet matches offset quality. You need much faster turnaround times because those presses eat up those jobs. A lot of smaller jobs are needing to be set up faster. And, you know, that just isn't a good use case for some of the legacy transactional solutions out there. So that's why we're showing and talking about a marketing-centric use case. The other thing I would mention here is I try to look for the latest information. And just this week, just a couple of days ago, Quad announced their direct marketing agency that they're opening up. And one of the stats that came out on their announcement was from Winterberry Group. And it says the direct marketing industry is projected to grow from 525 billion in this year to 700 billion by 2029. And it also says while traditional batch mail volume is declining, targeted and triggered programs are growing. So, you know, those are the kind of things that we are looking out for to try to help you understand what value you can bring. So let's go to one more slide, and I want to mention one more thing about value for some of you to have some takeaway. So again, we've heard this in different places, but if you're not familiar, Marco Bohr is a big time consultant in our printing industry. And I think Jet Summit talks about the value, how volume isn't a strategy, it's the value. And you know, it's becoming kind of a luxury type of item, direct mail is. So if someone's gonna invest, your clients are gonna invest in it, they expect results, they expect it to be color, graphical, personalized, relevant, using good data, using data correctly, and that's really important. And you know, that also was something I just wanted to mention. I know Brandon and BCC are trying to make these sessions really about value that we can bring to you as a client base. And whattheythink.com just yesterday actually put out an article, and it says the economic pressures mount an operational challenge and testify for print and mail providers. And right now, what you have to be aware of is that we print mail providers are focusing on automation and digital production and business expansion, which is important, but there's a big but in there, in that they're doing that over the concept of doing value-based selling. So there's a warning there that, yes, look at automation and integration, but don't give up on the value-based selling. And I think that's where we can help you. On this session, we're going to be a little wonky on how XMPie works in our demo, but that also becomes your value prop when you are trying to pitch your capabilities, when you have a modern solution that is leveraging things like Adobe and some of the concepts that we're going to talk about. That'll become part of your value prop. So with that, we'll go into a couple poll questions, I think, Brandon.
Absolutely. So the just a little heads up, this poll is a 4-part poll because we consolidated them all for you into one poll. So as you go through the poll questions, please click the pagination at the bottom right corner to click to the next question and answer it. For those of our attendees who've had difficulty accessing our poll, we will also put those questions in chat, and we encourage you guys to respond to those questions within chat as well. So if you give me 1 second, I will launch this for everybody. And I'll paste those questions into chat for you guys. So the first question of the poll is, how does your organization execute marketing-centric variable direct mail today? Very much a gauge who's with us kind of question. And our selection options are legacy standalone VDP solution, such as Fusion Pro, Print Shop Mail, etc., a CCM or a transactional composition platform, Adobe InDesign-centric workflow, which is tying into the XMPie's Adobe extensions, HP SmartStream, etc., or you're not using marketing-centric variable direct mail currently today. So I'm going to post this into chat. Second question, is centered around what role you're playing within your organization regarding direct mail. So we've got a few different roles here, data, logic, mail management. It's worth noting that a lot of the interest this year for 2026 Information Exchange has been around the data-centric mindset. So we have a lot of data specialists joining us, both live and virtually, which is really nice, actually. Composition, setup, and programming, pre-media or pre-press related roles, all of the above. If you're an operational individual, we got our management and executive level roles, as well as sales, marketing, and CSR. Third question, rather, in the last 6 months, have you had to go back to your client because of concerns of being able to meet their initial art or design requirements? Simple yes, no. And finally, the fourth question, what happens at your facility once the client's InDesign artwork is submitted to you? We request that they provide PDFs instead of the original creative files. We submit it to the programmers to deconstruct, reconstruct to match their original intent. Our pre-media, pre-press teams tag the variables in InDesign without changing the file, or I don't know. And for those of you who are curious, there is a poll results posted there into the chat. And if you submitted your responses, it looks like we've gotten 12 so far. If you submitted your responses, it will show in an on-screen view right now for people to respond to. So it looks like about half for the first question, how does your organization execute marketing-centric variable direct mail? Looks like about half right now are using Adobe InDesign-centric workflows. And then about 30% for legacy. Scott, David, do you see the poll results on your screen? Do you want to talk to any particular point while we're waiting for some results to come in?
Yeah, Scott, what's your thoughts on those? Because I know you and I had lots of discussions previously. Does that match what you expect?
Yeah, I figured it would be more around the legacy and transactional. And I know that term could be kind of mixed, so that might have been a little bit confusing based on what clients are using. But that's encouraging that so many are using an Adobe or InDesign-based approach. We'll get into that in a second. I'm not seeing, I don't know if I see the responses. I can see.
So I can read them off as well. It looks like,
okay, I see that.
Yeah, if you you should be able to toggle through them, Scott. Something I thought was interesting is also the, in the last 6 months, have you had to go back to your client because of concerns to be able to meet their artwork and design requirements? That's a 60-40 split, yes, no. So definitely the majority of folks that are responding
what was interesting here is like, where is it? Question one, obviously they've got 50% that are using Adobe InDesign-centric workflows. Just out of interest in the chat, I would love to see what is that XMPie already, or is that another Adobe InDesign tool, or is that data merged directly in Adobe InDesign? If everybody feels like putting that in the chat, I'd love to know. Okay, one for Smart Stream. Okay. Anything else to comment on, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we kind of prepped some of these so that when we discuss the demo and some of the things we're showing specifically, it will help accommodate or address some of the responses that we saw in a way that'll help you. Yeah.
We also got a chat response from Mark Campbell. Very small client list currently for variable. They are a data processor and they currently use the InDesign platform as well.
Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot we can build off of. Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for everybody who took the time to respond. Appreciate it.
Okay. So with that, Scott, I'm just keeping an eye on the time as well. Let me jump into a bit of a demo, if that's okay with you. I don't know if you want to pick up
while you're transitioning over, I just want to mention to the audience, I know there are a lot of data people on. So depending on the solutions that you're using today or that you're familiar with, this is where we want you to kind of see if you're more on the data programming side and don't see the setup and composition end of it. This is your chance to kind of peek behind the curtain so you can see what happens to the data that you're leveraging and BCC data, mail managed data, what happens after. And we want to show you what happens in the modern variable data world for marketing centric mail and kind of give you a feel for that, and maybe show you some InDesign and Adobe things that maybe you don't see on a daily basis. So just wanted to mention, this is your chance to kind of see maybe things you don't see on a daily basis. Same with the management executives, et cetera, might not see how this all works. This is your chance to get a little taste of it today.
Okay. Am I showing the right screen, Scott? We got Blooms?
Looks like InDesign, yeah, Blooms.
Okay. So let me introduce everyone to not just Adobe InDesign, but into the XMPie plugin. So XMPie has a native plugin to Adobe InDesign. So when we talk about using Adobe InDesign, we absolutely use Adobe InDesign in its native form. Just put my do not disturb 1 second. I can find it. And that plugin for Adobe InDesign has really been there for forever. Ever since XMPie was started, we have had an Adobe InDesign plugin. And when I say Adobe InDesign plugin, it almost makes it look and sound a bit minimal, I guess. When we talk about plugins, it's this little thing that sits in the side of something and does something and maybe a little bit useful. I think that terminology is fundamentally wrong for what we have, because yes, it's a plugin to Adobe InDesign, but it is more than just a plugin. This thing is the Swiss Army knife of merging data and design together within one platform in a native form. I'm going to try and talk you through this. And again, when we ask that question, Scott, in regards to, have you ever had to go back to a client and say, look, I love the concept you've come up with for the design for this direct mail piece, but given the technology that maybe I have as a digital printer, maybe I'm using a solution, I'm going to struggle to match that requirement with the data that you've given me and the design intent that you're asking me for, because I've either got to go and maybe programmatically put together. And again, I'm going back 20 years here where I used to program variable data in proprietary formats. So it literally used to be hand coding, and this is so far removed from that, where as a designer or as a graphic designer or almost as someone that has the ability of using Adobe InDesign, I can now succinctly merge data and design together in a way that I very rarely have to go back to my client and say, I can't do that, or could you just tweak this, or could you give it to me in a different format, or could you just scale it back a little bit? I don't have to do that, because where there's a will, there's a way, and where there's a way, there's normally XMPie as well. So let me show you some of this stuff. So this is essentially a fictitious company. They're called Blooms, as an example of a direct mail piece. And actually, I worked with a designer to pull this together. I gave them the brief that we have Blooms. It's a florist. That florist is split between a European branch and a US branch. They have branches across those countries. They obviously have customers. They know those customers. They know the previous purchases potentially, and they want to be able to go out and recognize those existing customers and get them back into either the bricks and mortar store or onto the website to purchase more. So I have some data, and just to show, I have some data. So we've got 3,000 records or so of data here, which is very simplistic: first name, last name, some address information, country. I have the nearest store, and they've just given me A, B, and C. Not too sure what that is, but we'll work with it. A flower type and an offer value. Now, and I think on one of the previous calls, Brandon, there was the comment as to changing data structures and working with data.
Yes. Yep.
And that made me smile, because this almost doesn't have the same effect when you're in this type of workflow inside XMPie, because we split the data away from the design. We're not combining them both together in a central view. We split them, and we allow people to work natively in those environments, and we allow it to come together in the most creative way possible without needing to compromise on that design.
I
So
believe
I
that
have
was
data.
I believe that was Megan Steinberger. Not to call you out, Megan, but I believe one of your biggest pain points, and feel free to throw it in chat if I'm correct. I believe one of your biggest pain points was the misalignment of inputted data. So
Okay. So we'll come back to that, because if I open up the the plugin, and XMPie and the plugin is in various places, you'll see it appear in in a traditional plugin pop. You'll see it appear in drop-down menus. You'll see it appearing in context menus as well. So again, just to reposition, when we talk about natively inside Adobe InDesign, we're there. And when I save this, I'm saving a native InDesign file. But anyway, let me go and grab that data. So if I literally just go and grab that data, and this data could be, as I'm working on the data on desktop, it could be live data. It could just be schematic data as proof data to get working with. Again, I can swap in and out the data as I want, providing that the schema doesn't change. And even if the schema does change because they come back, it's, oh, I just forgot to put this column of data in, I can merge that in as well. But let me just go and grab some data. I'm going to pull in a CSV file. I can work locally with CSV and Excel. When we talk about the server and we talk about scalable solutions, I'm connecting to SQL databases. I'm connecting to pretty much any structured database I can connect to, and multiple databases as well. So I can almost relationally look up one record with another and pull that data set in. So really the data piece is like on the left-hand side, and I'm working inside the design. So if I pull that design in, bring it in, I can immediately see that now I have in my palette 3,000 records that's just been pulled in, and I can almost literally just scroll through that data live on screen as I see it. But let me make something very clear. What I'm seeing here is almost like threefold. And inside the palette, you'll see here that I've got content objects and I've got input data. And let me try and just set this piece, because it's fundamental to when we start merging data and design. I have the data that's coming in, and I have content objects that I can place in the design. Now, what's the difference? Well, essentially, off the bat, my content object is exactly the same as the input. So data comes in, data goes out. But what I can now do is start to apply some logic to that as well. And I'll start to show you that. And I can start to apply additional logic and additional almost data without having to go back to my client and say, oh, can you just add another column, or could you change the format of that column or the structure of it because I can't work with it. Now I get control. So what we can do? Well, essentially, this is very much a plug and play. And I still talk to designers now that are, they don't understand that this can actually be done, where you can literally just take the data. So I'm taking first name, last name, and literally just dragging and dropping, double clicking, and now I'm embedding that logic on that content directly onto the page. And they say, well, actually, does that mean that it hooks the same format and the same styling? Well, no, because I've got the relationship to the data and the design is completely separate. So where I've got the first name Aidan over here in that font and that style, I've got the name over here, and I can just double click. So wherever I place that data, it is adopting the design intent of the designer. And remember, I've not designed this. I've literally been given this from a designer, and now I'm almost like just tagging the variable data that needs to go in it. But again, it's like this whole concept of a plugin. Yeah, we've got some, we can drag and drop, and you can see here it's just brought everything in as text, for example. But this is where I can now start to change, because the content of the input is all text. Actually, what I now need to do is start changing things up, because, for example, here I've got the map. Okay, and the designer in his great wisdom gave me a bunch of assets along with this piece as well. So I've now got a number of different map files. So I've got some maps that come out, and I need now to place those in. But hey, he's given me AI files. Thank you very much. Traditionally, I would normally have to go back and say, hey, can you either give me something different, or I'm going to have to transform those AI files into something that I can actually maybe use in the piece. But because this is Adobe InDesign, I can work natively in this environment as a designer. But I now need to get the maps in the piece. So for example, here, what I can now do is create a new content object, and I'm going to call it map. And I'm going to change the content here to be graphic. And you can start to see here that there's a variety of different things that I can create, like text with style. I can bring a text file in. I can start to change and vary the visibility. I can start to put tables in here. I can drop PDF files in here. So when I say XMPie is a Swiss Army knife, there's invariably a way that you can do it inside XMPie, and invariably there are multiples of ways in which you can do it as well. Okay, so let's just take a map here. I can take the map, but what I can now do is start to edit that rule. And for the data guys amongst you, this is where we can start to affect some data and some logic within this piece, because not only do I have like a visual drag and drop interface, I have an ability of almost like writing some of the expressional code directly in here as well. And actually, it's like, points of note. I think yesterday we spoke about AI. Worth noting that if you get stuck here, we have the XMPie assistant over on the help pages where you can literally go and ask it. And it's trained in everything that we do. So if you ever get stuck and say, how do I do this? It'll tell you, and you can literally just paste the code in here, which I might or might not have done several times. But if I take the map here, I've got the value and the logic that says, look, I need to take the, where am I taking? The nearest store. And I'm literally going to start to go like that. I've got 3 stores here. So I'm going to say, look, if the nearest store is and change the value. I'm actually just going to make that a string because I want to call it, what was my map called? -1. That one? Map -1 now. That's it. I can carry on that. Do build that out. Nearest store is B. And we'll create it. Map2, -2.ai, and then if it's not any of those, it's going to be map3 by matter of deduction. So I can create some logic. And again, I've not had to go back to the original data. I've not had to change anything. This is a content object that now only exists within this template. Let's just change that to a graphic. And now what I can nicely represent the graphic. I can click the graphic over here, double click the map. Okay, actually just do that a second. Okay, now it goes and instantaneously pulls in the variable map from my assets folder, and I can go here and I can literally say to XMPie and the plugin, where do my assets sit? I can point the directory. So now, as you can see, it's literally taking the string that I've given it and finding that asset and pulling it in. That asset could be sat locally. It could be sat on a CMS, as an image repository somewhere. I can pull it in via web address. So I can really start to build things out. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to just jump across to one that I've done. This is the completed piece, where you can now start to see exactly the same job, but this is the finished piece. And to point out some of the creative things that is happening here. And again, it doesn't matter whether this is a postcard, a business card, a book, a billboard poster. It makes no difference. If I can create it inside Adobe InDesign, I have the full capability and functionality of Adobe InDesign at my feet, ready to control and merge with data. To give you one example, I was sat with one of the Adobe gurus a few years back, and I was talking about XMPie, and he was like talking about InDesign, and I mentioned about knockout. I can't remember the conversation got, but he showed me this way of how he creates knockout text. I thought, that's pretty cool. I wonder if I can use that in the same way with XMPie. And just by using Adobe InDesign and the capability, so this is essentially a grouped object. If you start to build it out, you can look at the elements in here. Essentially, a grouped object. If you look at the effects, where is it gone? You'll see that you've got a knockout group here. If I turn that off, it will disappear. But this is just raw text. So again, I can now start to scroll through, and the text is dynamic. The the content objects are interacting directly with the Adobe InDesign elements. And because it's Adobe InDesign, I can simply just drag and drop and incorporate data directly in here. So I've got knockout text, for example. I can use the full plethora of paragraph rules and styles, objects. So you'll see here that we've got logic in here that says, actually, let's look at this one, for example, the rule, just for the data amongst us, we can literally go, look, if the flower type is roses, then apply this object, the object style. If it's tulips, then apply a different object style. Because what I want to do is drive, for example, very simply, the color of this bar at the top based on the range of flowers. So as I scroll through, I'm not only changing the color of the text and the paragraph styles, I'm changing the object styles as well. You'll also see there's the gradient tint here. Again, that's a dynamic piece. Depending on the length of the name, I'm starting to swap out different elements. So every single thing on this piece can be fully personalized to match the data that's coming in. And of course, because we're talking about direct mail, we have a plethora of barcode support. So if you want to incorporate barcodes into the piece, we can literally say, actually, again, I've got here, because if it's in Europe, I don't need to see the IMDb barcode. If it is in the US, then I do need to incorporate the IMDb barcode, which literally I can say, look, take the barcode font, use the USPS Intelligent Mail barcode, pass it the string, change the background color, and we'll pass that out as an image. So now I can create dynamic on-demand barcodes without having to go anywhere externally to pull those in. Again, if there's a feature inside Adobe InDesign, there is a way of incorporating, invariably many ways of incorporating the data into the design to really be able to drive this. I'm aware of the time, Scott, so I'm going to hand this back to you guys.
Yeah, if you can go back to we'll kind of close the direct mail print side of it with a couple of topics, and then we'll launch into some additional values. So
okay. You got that? Oh no, I'm not showing. So my apologies.
Yeah, go ahead and share. That's okay. So what I just wanted to kind of bring together is, you've got a little sneak peek into leveraging Adobe and InDesign, the XMPie process. And for those of you that are kind of a one-person show, if you will, based on the survey, you could do all the things Dave was doing as one person. However, we talked about how you can split that out as well. So you could have a pre-media, pre-press type person just stay in the Adobe InDesign world, whereas the data people focus on the data side and never have to actually use each other's tools if you wanted to do it that way. The other thing is important is that, when we scale this and do, high volume output, leveraging our server capabilities, it's important to know that we have in position, cut and stack capabilities for direct mail built right into the solution. And we have IP and patents around optimizing files for digital presses. So we're talking about PDF workflows. We're talking about PDF VT, which is variable transactional output that's appropriate. And for at least one person that was using InDesign data merge, which is a great starting point, you can't do the optimized output like we can when you're doing direct mail. So that's where the InDesign by itself doesn't go to the next level that we need from a print and production perspective. And again, for those, we know there are a lot of companies with different sizes and capabilities, but the other thing that's important here is you don't necessarily have to have a third-party imposition solution or post-composition optimization solution. This can do it all in one. Or if you do have those solutions in place, we can simply hand off the output to those solutions to do the next part of the processing. We are tight on time, but I know, Dave, we want to talk about, okay, take this a print direct mail touch point to how do we get digital involved, since that's such an important concept, how you can leverage that data that was really important to set up appropriately for print and all the business rules around it. But now you want to say, I want to use that for email, websites, video, all kinds of different things.
Okay, and I'm conscious of time, so rather than try and go through the whole thing, I know we've got a slide, Scott. I'm just trying to find it. Let's grab this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you saw inside the Bloom's postcard when I was in Adobe Design, we can do barcodes. And because the data is stored centrally, and because not only can I just use Adobe InDesign, I also have the ability of mapping out an entire journey. So we have a separate product called Circle that lets me orchestrate multi-channel triggered journeys for all the recipients. So I can take the same data that I had for the mail piece, pull that into the Circle, set that up as a campaign, which means that within that campaign, I've got the print piece that you saw. That's a fundamental part. I can render that out, produce the PDF, highly optimized, get it down to the press, feed it through, post systems if need be in workflows, but get it out the door. On the back of that, within the print pieces, I can also start to incorporate a fully personalized QR code. Because I know the data that drove each print piece, I can then marry that data to a digital experience within the same software. So within the piece, I just wonder if I can show, if I just grab this a second, just bring this across. So to give you an example of the workflow, let's move you off the screen. So this is Circle. So as you can see here, I've got the print piece that's going out, and that was the print piece that I just showed you. But that QR code can lead to a landing page that's fully personalized. And then based on that landing page, I can have any number of different triggers and touch points and actions that then unfold as that recipient goes through. And for example, I can also set up triggered actions. So for example, if they don't scan the QR code when the post hits them on the map, I can wait 2, 3, 4 days, an arbitrary number of days, and then look at my data and say, hey, for everyone that hasn't scanned that QR code on their mail piece, let's send them another piece of communication. Let's send them an email piece, and let's try and bring them back into the campaign. And when they're in the campaign, then let's try and engage them still, because we can then take them through with relevant communication that looks and feels in exactly the same way the print does, using the same assets, the same content to drive them through to a purchase, maybe on the website. But I know we've been talking a lot this week about informed delivery and the USPS. So again, because XMPie is an open system, I know we spoke about APIs again yesterday, Brandon. That was a topic of conversation. XMPie is fundamentally built upon its APIs. So anything that I do within the design, the creative, the data, the production is all driven and drivable through the APIs. So for example, if there is an ability to get maybe an informed visibility trigger from USPS that says, hey, this mail piece has actually left the depot and is actually in the mailman's bag. If that data can be extracted and used, then it could be triggered into an XMPie campaign that says, hey, this customer is about to receive their print piece. So actually, let's send them an email piece the same day that says, hey, Aidan, your mail is going to be different this day. And we start to feed that journey and feed that communication as part of that journey. So Circle can start to unfold these potentially either very simple, quite simplistic, or very complex customer journeys that wrap print as a core component within that journey. Scott?
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to go back to the slides real quick. We'll kind of wrap it up, like 16 after the demo slide, maybe. Got that one? Okay. But obviously we could talk about partnering. So we're doing some really cool things with ideas that we have around leveraging our solutions together with different partners, especially BCC. But from the opportunity perspective, I don't know, David, you have that slide 16? And we can kind of just wrap it up with a couple of those. That's
there we go. There we go. That was the last. Oh no, hold on, I've jumped.
Yeah, I think we're up a little much higher.
Yeah, yeah.
We're in the appendix there. Yeah, yeah. So just to summarize, I know we wanted to kind of talk about the value prop. So you can kind of see the value is in modernizing and optimizing. And one of the things that we learn with helping our clients, and especially when they go out and do pitches for marketing-centric types of use cases, I mean, it is valuable to them to maybe never say XMPie, but they can say, hey, we have a solution that when you provide us your creative, we leave it intact and we allow you to be as creative as you want to be. And then on the other side of the brain, we are able to then take the BCC data that's ready for the mail and be able to combine both of those together to get the highest levels of personalization, relevancy, deliverability, and not have to sacrifice the design integrity, which David was mentioning up front. And we talked a little bit about it on the panel, but it is really important when you're in this 2026, we're doing more modern output and we're using PDF workflows. PDF VT, if you haven't heard of that, is the format that you want to be using. So you can contact us. We'll fill you in on some of the value proposition around that. And next week I'll be in Nashville, so look forward to talking to some of you, maybe on some sidebar conversations on how XMPie and BCC could or should be working together, or some of the things we should be doing in our interfaces that might help out. We have some really good ideas and things that we're working on, but that will be able to be discussed even more detail. And then maybe, David, the last thing is the last slide with the demo capability. We can skip this for now. We'll provide you that. So if anybody wants to get their hands on the InDesign aspect of this, this is a free trial that you can have access to, allow you to do a couple direct mail use cases, kind of like David was just showing. And for those that are more on the pre-media, pre-press prep side, this is for you, and for people that use InDesign. And that gives you a really good feel for the starting point of how bringing data into the design actually happens. And then we can build off of that with you. Let us know if there are any questions in the chat or anybody has any topics they want to get into. Otherwise, I think we're wrapping it up.
You're walking the floor next week, Scott, with some free gifts as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm always good with some free, mostly gifts relating to software. So just to be clear,
Yeah,
maybe some other gifts. We'll figure out.
For those of you who are with us, I know there's a few people in our virtual who are also going to be seeing us live. So if you have some questions for XMPie, or you want to just have a dialogue and meet Scott, he will be with us next week, which is very exciting. Thank you guys so much. I want to encourage everybody, while we have a few more minutes, I want to encourage everybody, if you have any last minute questions or input, please put it into chat. It has been a very action-packed week as far as content goes. We've covered a lot of different things. And I just want to kind of tie a bow around this, because we've talked a lot this week about ROI, mail piece ROI, mail piece value, reducing undeliverable mail, et cetera, and we have a couple sessions later today focused on some additional data cleansing oriented topics, as well as mail tracking. So, if you weren't with us on the partner panel, partner panel yesterday, the forum panel, one of the big takeaways was that a lot of effective mail campaign strategy comes down to having visibility into your mail piece, and then also emphasizing and reinforcing the value of personalization and that digital touch point. So XMPie is an excellent partner in that regard, and that they can tie that in, and you can really optimize those campaigns to be more effective. I know one of the biggest challenges, and I'm speaking firsthand here because we are working with a local community college on a case study, a joint case study with XMPie, where we're tying in mail tracking, we're tying in our data cleansing oriented BCC software data cleansing stuff, and then we're also tying in the variability component that XMPie and the value XMPie brings into the picture. And it has been like moving mountains to try and get this community college off the ground and get them on board. And a lot of it's done, the incentive is that we're partnering with a local printer, and the only thing they have to do is pay for postage. Paper's covered, printing's covered, all the data services are covered, and it's still like moving mountains to get a customer to actually get a campaign off the ground. So for those of you guys who are here and you deal with marketing mail and you deal with direct customers, you know that effort all too well. Scott, David, any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
I'm good on my side. Look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Okay.
We have about an hour break before we get into our 1 o'clock session, 1 p.m. Eastern time session. So I just want to give a huge shout out and kudos for your time, Scott, and yours as well, David. It's always a pleasure to have you guys with us and have this content delivered virtually. The demo was incredibly valuable, and I really appreciate that. You're getting a lot of applause here. I don't know who these people are.
It's the paid crowd.
It's our plants in the audience. I really appreciate everyone's time, and if you have any follow-up questions, definitely pass them along. You've got their email right there, and I know they'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.